You know, have you ever just stared blankly at your bank statement and thought, wait, is spending 40% on housing way too much? Is 8% on entertainment actually reasonable? Well, you are definitely not alone. Tracking your spending can cause a massive amount of anxiety, right? Especially when you don't really know what your baseline numbers should actually look like.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're totally demystifying your budget and giving you a clear, calming compass to navigate those spending habits. We are diving into the infamous 50-30-20 rule.
So here's our game plan. We'll cover the 50-30-20 benchmark, define exactly what needs, wants, and savings are, put it all into practice, check your own numbers, and finally look at some crucial adjustments and financial traps.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, the 50-30-20 benchmark. It's a simple guideline for your net income.
So the 50-30-20 rule is essentially a budgeting guideline that chops your money into three distinct buckets: 50% for needs, 30% for wants, and 20% for savings and debt repayment. But hey, I want to heavily emphasize one absolutely critical point right off the bat. This rule, it strictly applies to your after-tax net income, okay? That means your take-home pay, the money that actually hits your checking account, definitely not your gross pay before taxes.
And what's really brilliant about breaking it down like this is how it instantly gives you a rock-solid structural foundation. Exactly half goes to the absolute essentials. Almost a third funds the lifestyle you actually enjoy living, and then there's that remaining 20%. That slice is specifically for wealth building. That right there is the absolute engine of your financial future.
Moving right along to Section 2, defining needs, wants, and savings. Basically, sorting your dollars. Think of your needs as the concrete foundation of your house. These are the non-negotiable expenses required for basic living, taking up 50% of your net pay. We're talking housing, utilities, the transportation you actually need to get to work or school, minimum required debt payments, basic health care, and, a standard phone plan. But pay really close attention here. Basic groceries absolutely qualify as a need, but that nightly sushi delivery? Yeah, that definitely does not make the cut.
Now, let's contrast those non-negotiables with our 30% wants category. These are discretionary expenses. They improve your quality of life, sure, but they aren't actually essential for your survival. This is your dining out, those fancy artisanal coffee shops, entertainment, travel, and your 5 different streaming subscriptions. It also includes gym memberships that go above just basic exercise you can get outside, and upgrades, like deciding you just have to buy the latest smartphone when your current one honestly works perfectly fine.
Finally, we hit the 20% savings and debt repayment category. Think of this as the reinforced roof of our financial blueprint. It catches everything from your emergency fund contributions and retirement accounts, like a 401k or an IRA, to specific savings goals, sinking funds for those future expenses you know are coming, and extra debt payments. Honestly, this category is absolutely crucial for getting out of debt faster and actually hitting those huge long-term goals.
Which brings us to Section 3, putting it into practice. Let's look at Jordan's paycheck.
Okay, meet Jordan. Jordan takes home precisely $2,400 a month after taxes. We're going to run Jordan's paycheck right through our framework just to show you exactly how this plays out in the real world.
Let's break down the math to prove just how accessible and honestly not intimidating this calculation really is. To find the 50% for needs, we literally just take Jordan's $2,400 and multiply it by 0.50. For the 30% wants, we multiply by 0.30, and for the 20% savings, you guessed it, we multiply that same $2,400 by 0.20. It is literally just straightforward decimal multiplication.
And look at how this perfectly illustrates the final balanced budget. It cleanly maps every single dollar of that net income to a specific job. So Jordan's guideline is now crystal clear. Spend absolutely no more than $1,200 on needs, strictly cap those wants at $720, and aggressively ensure at least $480 gets funneled right into savings and debt repayment every single month.
All right, Section 4, checking your own numbers. Time to run your diagnostic.
So after tracking your spending for a month or so, you can run this super simple 3-step diagnostic test yourself. First, total up all your spending in the needs categories, divide by your net income, and multiply by 100. If that result is sitting above 50%, your needs are running too hot. This is actually very often due to steep housing costs or a really heavy car payment.
Second, look at your total wants. If that number is north of 30%, you need to start hunting for spending leaks. And third, total your savings. If you're hovering anywhere below 20%, you really need to strategize and identify what has to change to get you there over time.
Let's wrap up with Section 5, Adjustments and Financial Traps. Let's talk about the nuance in the numbers.
Look, if you're watching this from an incredibly expensive, high cost of living city, take a deep breath. The 50-30-20 split is a benchmark. It is definitely not a strict law. In those super expensive areas, housing alone might easily gobble up 40% of your income. In that case, doing a course correction to a 55-25-20 or even a 60-20-20 split might be way more realistic for you. The overarching goal here is just to have a perfectly clear picture of where your money is flowing and to adjust that line between needs and wants while fiercely protecting your savings percentage.
Oh, and you really have to be aware of the minimum debt payment trap. In this framework, your minimum debt payments count as a need. Why? Because you literally have no choice but to pay them to stay current. But extra payments above that minimum, the ones that actually accelerate your payoff and save you all that interest, those count as savings. You need to make a crystal clear distinction right now. If you're only paying your minimums and calling it savings, you aren't actually building wealth. You're just barely meeting your basic obligations.
Which leaves us with this final, really important question to consider. What is your current split, and what small change can you make today to protect your 20%? I challenge you to take the blueprint we just built together and apply it directly to your own financial trajectory. Crunch your numbers, find your balance, and literally take back control of your financial future. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep tracking, keep adjusting, and I'll catch you next time.